Welcome to this explainer. Okay, consider this your ultimate crash course in SAP supply chain. If you're leading an SAP S/4HANA transformation right now, you already know you're navigating one of the most insanely complex software ecosystems on the planet. So today, we're cutting through all that technical noise to focus on the big picture of supply chain integration. We're going to look exactly at what you, as a project manager, actually need to govern so your implementation doesn't bring your physical supply chain to a dead, grinding halt.
We've built this explainer strictly around the strategic decisions and risk management realities you're going to face. We'll hit the 4 supply chain pillars, the 3 distinct views of shipping, that massive architectural choice between embedded and decentralized deployments, a real-world look at Coca-Cola, the hidden risks of master data, and finally, project governance and testing. All right, let's jump right in.
Section 1, the 4 supply chain pillars, understanding module ownership and business decisions. Let's start by laying down a core framework, looking at the 4 main modules in the SAP supply chain architecture and exactly what business decisions they own. This is absolutely foundational for any PM.
First up, SAP SD, or Sales and Distribution. Think of this as the module that manages your entire commercial order-to-cash process. It takes what the customer wants, their demand, and locks it into a binding commercial document, like a sales order. It handles your pricing, your taxes, your credit checks. But here's the crucial takeaway. SAP SD doesn't do the physical work. It just captures the commercial commitment.
Then, on the flip side, we have SAP MM, or Materials Management. This handles sourcing, procurement, and supplier invoices. It takes care of your purchasing and central plant-level inventory valuation. So, if SD is your commercial anchor for customers, SAP MM is your commercial anchor for suppliers and your high-level financials.
Okay, so how do we actually move the goods? That's where we shift from the commercial side over to the physical execution side with SAP TM and EWM. TM, or Transportation Management, takes that initial demand and figures out the logistics, planning routes, picking carriers, optimizing truck capacity. EWM, or Extended Warehouse Management, gets down into the weeds at the physical bin level. It handles the actual picking, packing, and loading of the physical goods. It's a brilliant handoff, really. TM does the high-level freight planning, and EWM actually executes the heavy lifting on the warehouse floor.
Now this right here is basically your PM cheat sheet. Knowing exactly which module generates which document is your very first line of defense when you're diagnosing an integration failure. When a user comes running to you saying a shipment is stuck, you need to know exactly where to look. Customer demand issue? Go check the sales order in SD. Transport planning failure? You're looking for the freight order in TM. If a forklift driver literally can't move a pallet, go investigate the warehouse task in EWM. Honestly, understanding this document ownership across modules is just essential governance.
Moving to Section 2, the 3 views of shipping, untangling a single physical shipment. Let's break down a concept that's going to visually clear up a ton of complexity for your project team.
It is a huge mistake to think of a shipment just as one thing in SAP. There are actually 3 distinct views. The commercial view asks, what was legally agreed upon, and what's going on the invoice. The transportation view asks, which specific carrier, route, and truck are we using to move it? And the warehouse execution view asks, exactly which shelf bin is this product sitting in, and which employee is packing it? Listen, a process is only truly complete when a shipment successfully clears the commercial, transportation, and warehouse execution views without hitting a status block in any of them.
All right, Section 3, Embedded versus Decentralized Architecture, the most critical deployment decision. Now we're tackling the absolute centerpiece of your S/4HANA architecture conversation. This single decision dictates your project's technical complexity and your operational risk.
What's really fascinating here is the core trade-off. Embedded EWM sits directly inside your central S/4HANA system. It shares the exact same data model, which means no messy data replication. It's clean, cost-efficient, and fantastic for small to mid-size operations. But take a look at the decentralized column. Decentralized EWM operates on a totally standalone server connected back to the central ERP. This requires complex data replication via IDOCs or queued remote function calls. So you might be wondering, why on earth would you take on that extra complexity? 2 words: scalability and ultimate operational independence.
To put that into perspective, ask yourself this question.
What happens to your physical warehouse if the central S/4HANA financial system goes offline for a massive accounting run or a weekend system upgrade? Well, if you chose embedded EWM, your forklift drivers literally have to stop working because everything shares the same system. But if you chose decentralized EWM, your physical operations just keep humming along seamlessly. The warehouse is running on its own independent server, and the data will just sync back up whenever the main ERP comes back online.
Let's see this in action in Section 4, Real-World Application, Coca-Cola, Isolating Risk to Keep the Bottling Lines Running. To really grasp how this architectural choice plays out at massive scale, let's look at Coca-Cola Euro-Pacific Partners. Coca-Cola deployed this incredibly smart hybrid architecture. They have their central S/4HANA system handling all the heavy finance and commercial orders. They intentionally chose embedded TM, which keeps their transportation planning centralized, so they get this great nationwide bird's-eye view to consolidate truckloads. But, and this is the kicker, they chose decentralized EWM on a standalone server for the warehouses. Why? Because EWM's material flow system actually controls their physical robotics and automated cranes. Those robots require sub-second response times. By decentralizing, Coca-Cola made absolutely sure that heavy financial processing on the central ERP wouldn't cause a latency spike that could literally crash a robot on the warehouse floor. Like, no way can you risk that. And here's why it really matters. In the beverage industry, bottling runs 24 hours a day, non-stop. If the central ERP goes down for maintenance, production cannot stop. For businesses pushing that kind of sheer volume, the risk isolation you get from a decentralized warehouse architecture isn't just some nice-to-have feature. It is absolutely mandatory.
Okay, shifting gears to Section 5, Master Data Integration Risks, Anticipating What Breaks Between Systems. As a project manager, you have to anticipate where things are going to break down before they actually do.
So what is the most common cause of SAP integration failure between TM, EWM, and S/4HANA? When a shipment fails to process, you might immediately think it's a bug in some custom code or a massive architectural flaw. But I'll tell you right now, based on countless project postmortems, the culprit is almost always master data.
The dependencies here are just incredibly tight. If a business partner isn't mapped perfectly over to a decentralized EWM system, the warehouse simply cannot process the order. If your product master data is missing basic weight or volume metrics, the TM optimizer is going to do something crazy, like try to pack 10 tons of product onto a 2-ton truck. If location data gets duplicated, your routing completely fails. If calendar data is wrong, SD might automatically promise a customer a delivery on a Sunday when your warehouse is locked up tight and your carrier is at home. If just one single attribute is missing, TM can't build the freight unit, EWM won't know how to pack it, and the whole shebang just stops. Finally, let's look at Section 6, Project Governance and Testing, the PM's playbook for cutover and hypercare. Let's open up that playbook and talk about enforcing strict control during testing, cutover, and that chaotic hypercare phase right after you go live.
When it comes to testing governance, you absolutely must push back against isolated module testing. It is a huge risk to just test if SD pricing works, or if an EWM scanner can successfully pick a box in a vacuum. Your testing governance has to mandate complete end-to-end process chains. You've got to test the entire flow, from sales order creation in SD through freight planning in TM, all the way down to physical warehouse loading in EWM. Why? Because module isolation is exactly where the most critical, project-derailing interface failures like to hide.
Then you go live, you enter hypercare, and suddenly everyone is screaming that the system is broken. During this phase, you have to force your team to strictly categorize every single incident. Is it actually a true system defect? Or is it a master data issue? Is it an integration queue that got stuck? Or, and this happens all the time, is it just a training gap where a user literally doesn't know which button to push? You cannot allow basic user training gaps to be falsely logged as SAP software defects, or your technical team is going to drown.
Which brings us to this non-negotiable executive rule for PMs. You must separate operational issues from true system defects. This is how you protect your project momentum. It ensures your tech team is actually spending their time fixing broken system queues and interface errors, while the business leaders take accountability for operational compliance, cleaning up missing master data, and getting their users properly trained. So, that brings us to the billion-dollar question you should be asking at your next steering committee meeting. Is your implementation team focused merely on turning on isolated software modules, or are they actively governing the end-to-end integration that actually prevents a supply chain failure? Focus on those handoffs, master your data, and fiercely protect your testing chains. Thanks for joining this Crash Course Explainer, and best of luck governing your SAP transformation.